Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Sanguru Ki Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Reading from our family business, The Art of Discipline, Prabhupada's books. The power is in the instruction. The instruction of the spiritual master is none different from the spiritual master himself. How is that? Lord Chaitanya ordered everyone to spread the Sankirtan movement. The Lord being absolute is none different from his words. In this way, the order of Mahaprabhu, imbued with his own spiritual power, is effectively transferred through the sound of his words from the heart of the Lord to the hearts of his sincere followers. Those who take those orders seriously become the Lord's representatives, the spiritual masters, who then pass these words down to their disciples. In this way, the order remains alive and vital. Srila Bhaktivinoda took the order he had himself received from his father and guru to preach Krishna consciousness through the publishing and distributing of books, and enrolled his own disciple in the same task. Srila Prabhupada accepted and cherished that direction in turn and passed it on to his own disciples. Such instructions, received as a priceless legacy, become the pride of a progressive disciple. Srila Prabhupada confirms this in his purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 135. The service of the spiritual master is essential. If there is no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. So that is our position. We might not actually have the ability to physically serve the spiritual master because he may not be present here personally with us, or he may have even left this planet. But Prabhupada points out here that if there's no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. So in this way we're connected. There's no difference between the spiritual master's instructions and the spiritual master himself. In his absence, therefore, his words of direction should be the pride of the disciple. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 4, entitled Hiranyakashipu Terrorizes the Universe, Text 39. Kvachid Rudati Vaikunta. Kvachid Rudati Vaikunta. Chinta Shabala Chetana. Chinta Shabala Chetana. Kvachid Dasati Touch Chinta. Kvachid Dasati Touch Chinta. Hlada Udgayati Kvachid. Hlada Udgayati Kvachid. Kvachid Rudati Vaikunta. Chinta Sabala Chetana. Kvachid Dasati Touch Chinta. Hlada Udgayati Kvachid. Kvachid Rudati Vaikunta. Chinta Shabala Chetana. Kvachid Dasati Touch Chinta. Hlada Udgayati Kvachid. Kvachid Rudati Vaikunta. Chinta Shabala Chetana. Kvachidda satitach chinta hlada udgayati kvachit. Please chant. Kvachit. Sometimes Rudati cries Vaikuntha Chinta by thoughts of Krishna, Shabala Chaitana, whose mind was bewildered, Kvachit, sometimes Hasati laughs, Tat Chinta by thoughts of him, Alada being jubilant, Udgayati chants very loudly, Kvachit, sometimes. Translation: because of advancement in Krishna consciousness, he sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, sometimes expressed jubilation, and sometimes sang loudly. Please repeat. Because of advancement in Krishna consciousness, he sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, sometimes expressed jubilation, and sometimes sang loudly. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This verse further clarifies the comparison of a devotee to a child. If a mother leaves her small child in his bed or cradle and goes away to attend to some family duties, the child immediately understands that his mother's gone away and therefore he cries. But as soon as the mother returns and cares for the child laughs and becomes jubilant. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, being always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, sometimes felt separation, thinking, where is Krishna? This is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virhename. When an exalted devotee feels that Krishna is invisible, having gone away, he cries in separation, and sometimes when he sees that Krishna has returned to care for him, he laughs, just as a child sometimes laughs upon understanding that his mother is taking care of him. These symptoms are called bhava. In the nectar of devotion, various bhavas, ecstatic conditions of a devotee, are fully described. These bhavas are visible in the activities of a perfect devotee. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana-salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yana Tasmai Shri-Gurave Namaha Bhakam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Girim Nyakripatabham Vande Shri-Girim Dinitaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So it's not often you'll see a child giving up everything and becoming very advanced devotee. This means carrying on from where he left off. So Arjuna asked the question, and sometimes we even ask ourselves the question that I've given up pursuing some path of security in the material world. Actually, there is no security in the material world. Padam, padam, yadvi, padam. Step after step, there's danger. It doesn't matter what you do or where you are in this world, there's danger at any time. I mentioned before once there was a fellow from the town I was brought up in, and he was well known as very advanced martial arts expert, and even all the tough guys in town respected him, wouldn't go near him. So he had trained himself so well that he was kind of well protected. He was able to defend himself, and nobody would bother him. But the poor chap, he ended up with cancer, and that took him. He couldn't defend himself against that. So even if we become the best martial artist, or we've got the best security team guarding us, like sometimes you see prominent people, they hire security people to keep them protected, but there's no guarantee that will succeed. So step after step, there's danger in this world. And so Arjuna was asking this question to Krishna: if I take to this path and I don't succeed because it seems very difficult, then I will have given up my material way of life, and so I will have failed there. And if I don't complete this path spiritually, then I will have failed there also. And he asked Krishna, will I not perish like a riven cloud? So sometimes you see clouds in the sky and there's a small cloud breaks away and then it just disperses. It has, like Arjuna says, with no abode in any sphere. So Krishna says to him, does anyone remember what Krishna says? What's Krishna's answer to this? Neha bikramo nasosti prativaya nirvijite swapamapya siddharmashyat trayate mahadopayat. A little advancement in this path protects one from the most dangerous type of fear. So the most dangerous type of fear is that we fall back again into the animal species of life. And he says that yoga brashta bijayate, that whatever advancement you make in this life, you'll take up from where you left off. Suchinam shimatam gehe yoga brashta bijayate. So you'll take birth again in a suchinam, which means clean. Suchi means clean, which means Brahmin family. Or Srimatam, Sri means Sri Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune. Or you'll take birth in a wealthy family, so that you won't have to simply struggle for the necessities of life. Sometimes people are so much struggling for the necessities of life that they don't have time to think about self-realization. Sometimes we see that on the street, like, oh, never mind this, Bhagavad Gita, I've got work to go to. Or, they've got their mind is so preoccupied just with trying to make ends meet. So, of course, devotees are trying to make it easy for these folks out there by taking the holy name out to them and giving them the books so that they can get the opportunity to benefit. Prabhupada says even if they touch this book, they're benefited. These books are considered to be the Lord's words, and as such, they're deities. That's why we wouldn't put a deity on the ground or on the shoe rack. We wouldn't put our books on the ground or on the shoe rack or on the seat that we sit on. We wouldn't, if a book was on the floor, we wouldn't move it with our feet. Prabhupada taught the devotees anything which is used in the Lord's service shouldn't be touched with our feet. That's a sign of disrespect. So Krishna says that even without endeavoring in the next life, you'll be automatically attracted to principles of yoga. So maybe that's why we're here today, because we did something in the last life. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, we take up from where we left off. So that may be the case, but we should be careful not to become proud, thinking, well, I must have been a great yogi in my last life. If we were that great, why are we here? If we were great, we shouldn't have come back. So it means we didn't complete. Or we can just accept that we are a product of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and his followers, that we were simply lost in the illusion of material world, and by the Om Jnana Timirandasya, by the torchlight of knowledge, then we're being pulled out of this material world. So sometimes we chant this verse before class. Bekam karoti vachalam pangam lagate grim nyat kripa tamaham vandeshi grim dinitarnam. So the translation of this verse is that by the mercy of the spiritual master, a lame man can cross over mountains, a dumb person can recite eloquent poetry, and a blind man can see stars in the sky at night. So anything's possible by the mercy of the spiritual master. So the spiritual master and anyone who reminds us to follow the spiritual master, then they're actually our well-wishers. So Prahlad Maharaj, we can see that he was so advanced that at such a young age he was giving up everything, and he was so advanced that he wasn't even conscious of his bodily necessities being taken care of. So Prabhupada says that the devotee should try to minimize eating, sleeping, mating, and defending these 4 animal propensities to bring them to zero. So this is our goal, but not artificially, because we also have to remember that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little, then they cannot be a yogi. So we have to be balanced in these activities so that we can continue throughout our whole life in a balanced way. Not to be too lax on following and not to be too neglectful. This is called Niyamagraha. That's right. Niyamagraha. So Niyamagraha means too much attachment to or too much neglect of the scriptural rules and regulations, or following the rules and regulations without knowing the purpose behind them. This is similar to the Veda Vadarat, people who follow the Vedas but they don't know the purpose behind them. They're attached to the Vedas but they actually don't know the meaning or the purpose of following them. So therefore Prabhupada wanted us to inquire so that we can understand. And he also explained, Krishna explains the regulative principles of freedom. So the regulative principles are not there just as some kind of tripwire. It's like, here, do this. It's something that's impossible for you to do. So you just do this and you'll fail it and I'll just laugh at you. It's not like Krishna's some kind of sadist or something who's watching us squirming with the impossible. No. But when we understand the purpose behind them, then Krishna is saying that you're better than this. You don't have to be Godas. You don't have to be servant of the senses. We can be Goswami. We can be master of the mind and senses. So here we're hearing about Prahlad Maharaj. So we can see also one of the words in the verse, which is Hlada. Does anyone remember what that word Hlada means? Yeah, being jubilant. So this is there's a Shakti called Hladini Shakti. This is a name for Radharani. She's a pleasure potency. She gives pleasure to Krishna and gives pleasure to all the living entities by engaging them in Krishna's service. She's the pleasure-giving potency. So Prahlad, his very name, means one who was full of jubilation. And this is also explained in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that this Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is joyfully performed. So why would we not be performing a devotional service joyfully? Anybody? Sorry? It may be uncomfortable for us. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes we're experiencing a bit of austerity. But also, when we become more advanced in devotional service, then it's like when Prabhupada visited Scotland, the devotees were doing Sankirtan in Scotland, And he was glorifying him. He's saying, for me, I find it very cold. He says, but for you, it's just something on your skin. It's just nothing for you, because the devotees were going out and they were trying to please him. So Prabhupada was glorifying them that they were able to do such austerities and think nothing of it and just go and do it anyway. So we do it and we feel the cold. I remember doing Sankirtan many occasions, but one in particular in East Kilbride, it was so cold that, and I was kind of on one spot trying to stop people. It was so cold that the only time I wasn't aware of it was when someone was actually stopping and the book exchange was going on. So you might experience that your mind is fully absorbed. In between, then your mind was more absorbed in the body. It's like, oh, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold. And the mind's yelling at you. It's preaching to you. Give up, go away. Go and find a hand dryer in the toilet. And then you write a directory of all the hand dryers in all the Sanktan towns in Scotland so you can find your source of shelter. But what happens, you go and thaw out and then you come back out and then you got to go through that whole thing of once again becoming cold. So we used to just think, okay, you're cold, just let the body be cold, that's it, just observe it. But this time it was so cold that I couldn't actually bend my ankles and I was walking away like Frankenstein's monster. It was interesting just to observe that and see that sometimes you're not even so much aware of it until you come away from the yajna. You're coming away from the sacrifice. And Prahlad Maharaj, he wasn't aware, not that we're on such an advanced stage as he is, but sometimes we get a little taste that we forget about the bodily miseries. So sometimes it's not joyfully performed because our mind is absorbed in the body or in some mental thing. It's a mental disturbance, miseries coming from our own body and mind, other living entities, natural phenomena. But gradually, by performing devotional service, we become more and more connected with the spiritual energy. And that becomes an impetus for us to be even more keen to connect with that spiritual energy. Because we know otherwise we're going to be absorbed in the material world, which means misery. So Prahlad Maharaj, he was so absorbed that even when his father was, we're going to find quite soon, his father has persecuted him quite severely, but he's not even aware of it. He's not even feeling it. Just like Haridas Thakur, he was venerated by, he was actually from a Mohammedan background, but he became such a great devotee that Lord Chaitanya called him the Namacharya, or the spiritual master of the holy name. He was chanting 3 times 64 rounds a day, and he was definitely joyful. But because he was so much venerated by the local people, then the Muslim ruler at that time became envious and ordered them to be whipped in 20, how many? 20 marketplaces? It was 23, was it? 20-something. When it gets to, a couple of marketplaces, you probably would lose count. But to be dragged through the marketplaces and whipped. So usually in these situations, then the person's dead at the end of it. But the 2 attendants who were tasked with that terrible activity, after quite a few marketplaces and whipping him, then they were becoming quite fearful. And Haridas Thakur said to him, "My dear brothers, what's the problem?" He says, "We've been instructed to whip you in 23 marketplaces, or however many it was 20-something. But you're not dying." He said, Haridas Thakur, he said, "I'm sorry to cause you so much trouble. Just throw me in the Ganges, and then you can report back to your master that you've finished me off." But it was also stated that Haridas Thakur wasn't feeling pain when he's been whipped; he was feeling ecstasy. And he was, even in those stages, if you've been whipped so many times like that, then you would find it difficult to be compassionate upon someone. You'd be just looking for relief from your distress. So he was completely off the bodily concept of life. Also in the Sad Goswami Ashtaka, the 8 prayers and glorification of 6 Goswamis, it mentions that they were so detached that sometimes they would just forget to eat, they forget to sleep. They were so absorbed. So when we shouldn't artificially try to renounce things. We should simply engage in Krishna's service, engage everything in Krishna's service, and in that way we become properly detached. Srila Prabhupada explains it. It's actually the nature of the living entity to be attached. But we have to transfer that attachment. See, just like the astronaut, they go out to space and they float around for some time, but then they have to come back because they have no resting place. So even ultimately, if one gets impersonal liberation, it's not actually the resting place of the soul, because the soul by nature is active. And therefore, we cannot remain inactive for long. It's not in our Sanatan Dharma, our eternal nature. So we also read not so long ago in the 5th canto, the activities of Maharaj Rishabdev. He also was so absorbed that he wasn't conscious of the externals. Sometimes he'd eat and sometimes he wouldn't. This is also, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the Avanti Brahmin? He was in the, I think it's 11th or 12th canto. There he was, sometimes he would simply just be eating some dry leaves. He was so renounced that he'd just be lying in one place, chanting all the time. He wasn't like a lazy guy that decided, oh, can't be bothered doing it, I'm just going to lie here and chant. He was just so absorbed and so detached. And sometimes he absorbed the mentality of the python. That the python, they just stay in one place, and if food comes by, then they eat. And if nothing comes by, they don't eat for some time. So he was like that. You know, if a couple of dry leaves blew near him, he'd eat them. If nothing came, then he wouldn't eat anything. Can you imagine that? But Prabhupada's made it very easy for us. He's given us a regulated lifestyle where every day we get prasadam and we get opportunity to rest. And we have nice temples. There's not too much austerity. I was just reading last night that when Prabhupada was in Juhu in Bombay, there was this court case going on and the guy was trying to cheat the devotees and Prabhupada out of the land and out of the money. And the devotees were referring to the place as a temple, but basically it was a concrete platform with a tarpaulin over it and some poles holding it up. But they were considering this was where they were going to build a temple for Krishna, so they were calling it a temple from that point. So this is the vision of the devotee. And they were very austere. They were getting jaundice and they were getting malaria, etc. So whatever part of the world you go to, there's always some different flavour of the 3 kleshas, living entities that produce miseries for us, and the different natural phenomena. So we can't escape these 3 kleshas, these 3 types of sufferings. As long as we're in this material world, in this material body, then we do have to undergo these things. But the good news is that in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami explains that the beginning of pure devotional service is relief from all material distress. So we're seeing this with Prahlad Maharaj. He wasn't experiencing material distress. Haridas Thakur, he wasn't experiencing material distress when he was being whipped in the marketplaces. So many instances like that, because they were so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that they weren't aware of the bodily pains. Even Prabhupada himself, when he came to the manor in 1977, shortly before he passed away, he came back from Vrindavan to Bhaktivedanta Manor. And you see, if you go there, you're seeing Prabhupada's room. There's a palanquin there, which the devotees used to carry him from his room down to the temple because he couldn't walk. He was so emaciated. And he had some problem, and the doctors, the devotees took him into Watford General Hospital. And the doctors were amazed to say, how can someone be alive in this condition? Because it was skin on the bone, he said he must be feeling his body's on fire everywhere. He said, this is... it's not possible to remain alive in these conditions. But Prabhupada was not only alive, he was preaching, he was translating, he was directing a worldwide movement. So these things shows that such a person is not an ordinary person. And if we follow in their footsteps, Mahajana Yena Gatasa Panta, following the footsteps of the previous Mahatmas, or Mahajanas, the great persons. Jana means person, Maha means great, Mahajan. Then we will also go where they are. And Prabhupada was actually mentioning that to the devotees. They were going through some real difficult time with this trickster, Mr. Nair. He was very expert at cheating people, and he was employing various hoodlums to terrorize the devotees who were trying to protect the land that they were buying, etc. And Prabhupada says, don't worry, we'll all be back to Godhead. And he says, in the spiritual world, we will have our ISKCON there. Shamasunda will be there. Tamal will be there. This one will be there. He says, but Mr. Nair, he will have to remain behind. And that's sad. And you can see that even, he was causing so much trouble, Prabhupada was being polite about it. It wasn't like, he can rot in hell for all I care. It wasn't like that. He was still compassionate. So this is the test, is that to be compassionate, even when we're in a suffering condition, to be compassionate to others, that's a great test for us. So when the devotees are out in Sankirtan, sometimes they're experiencing all the threefold miseries at one time. You might have, the mucus is running down your nose like sports stripes, and you may have wet shoes, and you may have someone telling you where to go, and not so very pleasant place to go, and you think, well, I could just smack you. But in your mind, you're thinking, no, we can't do that. We'd be running about up and down the street all day smacking people. So we can't become like an ISKCON smacky. But we have to learn to tolerate insults being thrown at us. Our mind saying, what are you doing out here? You could just be in a comfortable situation, just go and get a job, or go and settle down or something. Or whatever situation, it may not just be in Sankirtan, whatever else we're doing, there's austerities there, we can't escape it. Krishna won't let us come back to Godhead without actually proving ourselves. Maya won't let it. Daivahesha gunamayi mama maya duratya. That we cannot overcome Maya simply by our own endeavours, by our own mental concoctions. We have to get the mercy of Krishna. We have to take shelter in Krishna. And in this way, Maya is actually pushing us to take shelter in Krishna. That we come to the point where we realize Bahunam Janmanamante Yanavamam Prapadyate Vasudeva Swami Ti Samahatmas Durlabha. So after many births, one whose actually knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes, and all that is, such a great soul is very rare. So after many births, or after many attempts at trying to be the controller and the enjoyer, then finally we become materially exhausted and think, I can't enjoy. I'm trying so hard to enjoy in this material world, but I can't. Krishna won't let me. That's Krishna's mercy. He won't let us enjoy any longer. Because Prabhupada says, everybody, the meaning of life is to enjoy, but they don't know how to enjoy. What they're doing is, they may appear to be enjoying now, but it's paving future suffering. So when we're compassionate for them, don't be fooled into thinking, oh, these guys are enjoying out here. They might be temporarily enjoying, but the reaction comes, what's the price they have to pay for coming out of McDonald's with a burger, in their hand, or so many other things that they're doing. The price is a very big price to pay. So the devotees are kindly going out there trying to remind them that there's another way and you don't have to go down this road. And even if they don't want to know, they're still getting benefited. Sometimes they'll give a donation, they don't want a book, or they'll touch a book, or they hear Hare Krishna. We used to get everybody to chant Gauranga, because by chanting the name of Lord Chaitanya, there's no offence. Lord Chaitanya doesn't take offence. That's why we chant the Panchatattva Maha Mantra, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, before we chant the Maha Mantra, because we're relieving ourselves of any offences. So therefore, we used to get people to chant Gauranga so that they might not take a book, they might not give a donation, they might not even chant, but they hear us chanting, so they're still getting benefited. So that's our sole purpose of being out there, is to benefit people. And this is called Sarva Upakar, the highest welfare work. There's so many other types of welfare work which can benefit the living entity, but some of these welfare works are not in the mode of goodness, not even the mode of passion, but even the mode of ignorance. But this is the highest welfare work, where it's helping free one from the material world once and for all. And the slightest bit of agyata sukriti, or service performed unknowingly, then that can give that person great benefit. Even a little advancement protects one from the most dangerous type of fear. So devotees thinking like that, just get them to give a penny. Even if they say, oh, is it for the blind dogs in Biafra? Say, yeah, we help everybody. Just give a donation so you can get benefited. Of course, we're not going out collecting for blind dogs in Biafra, if Biafra even exists any longer. It was a place in Africa that used to be, there was always some famine or drought going on. As kids, we used to have to donate to it. So we're not saying go out and collect for some bogus thing, but sometimes we just, our wish to engage them in benefit is more than just on a mundane platform. But the best thing is if we can actually get people to take a book and convince them to read it. But we shouldn't spend too long, because if someone's actually interested, we won't have to convince them too much. If it has to take half an hour, then they weren't that interested. So the main thing is, if they're interested, it's okay, take the book and read it. No, but I'd like to hear from you. Well, that's okay. I'm only going to see what's in the book, and the book says it better than me. So go and read the book and then come back to us, or go and read the book and then come to one of our programs and you can find out more. So we have to be smart to people who are just wasting their time. Because they're not just wasting our time, they're also wasting the time of other people who may get a book, who are actually maybe interested. People who may be interested who are walking by while we're perhaps spending some time with someone who's not so interested, or sometimes purposefully just taking your time up. And sometimes people like to gratify themselves by speaking to a devotee. They like to consider themselves like an armchair philosopher. And we can entertain them for a little while, but don't let them take up too much of our time. Let them read the books. So we'll just stop there. So we continue with this devotional service, then we will also be achieving the stage of joyfully performing our devotional service at every moment. We'll be experiencing bliss. At the moment, we're working through our attachments, and we're undecided on many things. But in due course of time, once these attachments are clear and the path becomes clear, then we'll be thinking, why didn't I give all this up sooner? I've just been perpetuating more misery. But we're on the path, we're in the shower and we're getting cleansed, so just stay in the shower. Whatever happens, you stay in the shower, and we'll always look back and think, I'm glad I stayed in it. Whatever difficulty you're going through, just don't leave, just stay in the shower. I was in Chaitanya College as a young man, and Mother Yamuna gave a class, and she said, whatever happens, don't leave ISKCON. Don't walk away from the shelter of Srila Prabhupada, and guaranteed you'll go back to Godhead. Any questions or comments? Gandaki?
Srila Prabhupada says that since gratification is a solid, You cannot do too much or you cannot do too little. But someone can take this as a license for simplification, and it this is clarify what Prabhupada means.
Yeah. So if we're not sure, then we can ask a spiritual master or someone who we think may know better than ourselves. And if we take into account all of Prabhupada's instructions, if we take something out of the context, then we can misuse it. So is it us who are to be the judge on what is too much and what is too little? So if we are having too little sense gratification, what does it say? All work and no play makes Jack a dull lad. So if we're not getting any play or any pleasure, then that can be a bit of a problem because it may become too difficult for us to continue. But if we're simply just doing all the things we like to do and we've got such an enjoying spirit, then it's difficult to remain respectful to other people, because then in such an enjoying spirit, then we're not attentive to proper etiquette and we might commit offences. So I guess that's it's within the parameters which Srila Prabhupada gave us. For example, the householders, they're allowed to have sex life for the procreation of children, and once a month for that. It's not like they just have free reign to do that. Prabhupada gave some guidelines, and they should chant 50 rounds before trying for a child, stuff like that. So these are the safe. If we stay within the safe guidelines, then we're fine. If we go outside of that, then we're taking it into our own hands, and then it's between us and Krishna, our Guru. So at the same time, different devotees have different needs. Like some devotees are quite happy to take, a small bowl of khichdi and they'll be okay for the rest of the day, once a day. Other devotees, they have to have 3 square meals a day, and it has to be substantial, otherwise they're going to tear the walls down. So we have to also allow the individual what they need to continue. And also we need to understand what we need, so that it doesn't become artificially austere, or that we cultivate too much of an enjoying spirit. Would anyone like to add any comment to that? All right. Do you have any realizations on that yourself, Gundaki? Well, that's it. It's and thankfully, there is enough salt in Krishna consciousness, and Krishna ISKCON is like a big bowl of khichdi. So many different varieties of things in there. Even sometimes you make khichdi, you can make 1,000,001 different varieties. You can use different rice, different dal, different spices, different vegetables, no vegetables, and ghee, butter, cashews, fried curd. We used to make very opulent. On traveling sanctum during the week, we'd have simple khichdi. On Sunday, we'd have a khichdi feast. There'd be fried cashews and fried curd in it. So we have enough different activities to keep our mind engaged, and if we're doing that, then we will be satisfied. If we don't engage ourselves properly, then we'll be looking for something in the sensual level. So when we engage the mind, because the mind is the center of the senses, the main thing about engaging the mind is being attentive to hearing japa, class, instructions, and trying to take that on board so we can move forward. And when the mind is properly absorbed, then the senses are automatically, as Prabhupada says, they become no more dangerous than serpents with broken fangs. If a snake who's generally got a bad bite, some of the most poisonous snakes are quite small, like the green mamba, the black mamba. They're not that big, but they're deadly poisonous. But if you take their fangs off them, then they can't even crush your little finger. They don't have that power, and they try to bite you with their gums. You just laugh at them. So, Rishikesha, Rishikena, saving back to Ruchitu, we engage our mind and senses in the master of the senses, Rishikesh. And we engage it in his service, then they become pacified, become fully engaged, and become Krishnaized. So that is how we experience pleasure. If we don't do that, then we're going to be looking for pleasure in the material sense. And then we have to be careful what we do with that. Okay, we'll just stop there. ISKCON Guru Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.